Okay, let's do this. Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Well, this was a surprise. This is a very welcome movie, and a movie that I was looking forward to for quite a while. Personally, I am a Dungeons and Dragons player and a huge fan of the lore written by on all of the amazing writers behind Dungeons and Dragons. It is something that's not written by a single person, and I think therefore it allows the sort of the my brainstorming and I guess fan fiction, all of these things combined, which is what Dungeons and Dragons is all about, right? It's basically lore that you create with your buddies. You borrow existing lore and you add to your story. You could create Dungeons and Dragons about anything, not just Dungeons and Dragons. And I think the name is really what tells people, hey, is this medieval? What is this actually about? It sounds very medieval, right? But it's not. The idea is just that it's fiction and it's just going to throw you off. And just it's hilarious because back in the 80s and 90s, there were people questioning what is Dungeons and Dragons. Is it some kind of demonic ritual that kids are playing and they shouldn't be involved in? And there are so many funny articles about it. And I only got introduced to this in the late 90s, early 2000s, I believe. And yeah, I definitely stuck to it because it is so fun to be able to just use all the little figurines and toys that you would have in your house. Draw out a terrain with a piece of paper, build your own backstory, and yeah, you can really just craft whatever kind of tale you like. Use a bit of the lore, use a bit of the monsters that you had. Um, things you could read up online, things you could find out from a store nearby, because we didn't really have access to a lot of the how would I say generic D&D lore monsters. And so we used to borrow some information that we had from different sites online, Wikipedias and stuff, and just write it down on a piece of paper, modify its stats a little bit, balance things out, and play it however the hell we wanted. And yeah, it was pretty fun. And of course, the most difficult part of D&D is keeping the party together, which is pretty much what happened to me, and I think a lot of other people out there. It's so difficult just to keep the campaign going because the biggest thing about D&D, which a lot of people I think misjudge, is that D&D is about commitment. It's about commitment between a group of friends, and it really tells you who your friends are, in the long term as well, because commitments really do, I would say, push away people from each other unless they're committed to each other as a group. So a lot of times responsibilities mean, hey, I got no time for you. And that turns out to be the case for a lot of people. Some people learn how to make time. And it's unfortunate that I haven't been able to find enough of those kinds of people. There are a few, but you know, I guess I'll just keep them close. Anyway, to the movie then. So Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, I think, is an excellent movie to sort of completely obliterate whatever the hell happened before in the previous Dungeons and Dragons film, which I unfortunately liked when I first watched it. But I think I realized as time went on that it gets sillier and sillier. As I grew up, I realized that, okay, this is actually a horrible movie. I remember Jeremy Irons screaming his head off in that film. Oh man, it was just so much fun. But now that I think about it, it's an absolutely horrible movie. And I think this movie is a really good stepping stone to future installations of Dungeons and Dragons. And also, it's a really important because the style this film is taken, it's such that it doesn't matter who is in the crew. You're able to tell every member's story in their own unique way. You're able to utilize them to some extent. You're able to show how the party works together because of the different abilities, the different resources, the different roles that they play. And you're able to show that how that team is able to go through any adventure you throw them into. And this means that in the future films or future installations, you don't necessarily need the same cast. You can always keep rotating the cast because the writers for this actually knew how to build an entire story within the 2 hours and 15 minutes. And you don't have to know about Dungeons and Dragons. You just have to know about these characters you see on screen, whatever they tell you on screen about their lore, whatever they tell you their motivations are, whatever they tell you their objectives are. And yeah, you just go through with it. So the characters have their own motivations to achieve whatever set objective is, and they do what they gotta do to get there. And they get there, and then things happen, and it's fantastic. I think it's pretty much this is basics of writing. This is literally what you learn in writing school, I'm sure, if you attend. But this is excellent. I think this is a really good show of a very simple story, not overdone. CGI is pretty basic. Acting is pretty basic. Script writing, storytelling is very basic, but I think it's a very, very safe film. And it's really enjoyable, I would say. As a Dungeons and Dragons fan, I really enjoyed it. But as a film overall, I would say it's a very, very average movie. Is it a good watch? Yes, sure. Is it a rewatchable movie? Maybe not. I don't think so. But it's something that maybe I'll watch when I'm bored, just for the fun of it. But it's not something that you can keep rewatching because there are a lot of downtime in this film. There's a lot of moments and gaps in this movie where characters are just, doing not much or not enough. And that's funny to say because this movie actually takes you traveling quite a bit to different parts of, Neverwinter, and other cities as well. And it's so iconic when I saw Neverwinter as a city because I actually played Neverwinter online, the video game, and it looks exactly like the city that you play online. And if you guys are Dungeons and Dragons fans as well, when you buy books about Neverwinter, you can see the castles are built in the exact same structure, the city is built in the exact same structure, the marketplaces, the merchants, the traveling merchants, and all of these. I think it's so well, beautiful, and constructed. The world building in this is just really, really well done. I think Chris Pratt had a very strange role in this, would be my only complaint because um, he is a bard who doesn't have any bard abilities. It's really strange because all the other characters are able to use their character abilities as per Dungeons and Dragons lore. You have the, barbarian, human barbarian fighter or whatever, or fighter barbarian slash, I don't know. I think she's multi-classing, definitely for sure. You have the wizard. Um, Wait, he is actually a wild magic sorcerer, right? He is sorcerer because he has wild magic, so he's not really a wizard. He doesn't really use a book to cast spells. He's able to cast it at will. Um, so yeah, he's a sorcerer. You have the halfling, tiefling, rogue kind of character, played by what's her name? Sophia Lillis, Doric, yeah, you have that kind of character. You have Forge, who I'm sure would have been the ranger in the story, but he's a villain, so he's used very much towards the end. You don't really see him using his ability, and unfortunately, towards the very end, before he's able to fire his bow, they kill him, or they get rid of him. They don't kill him, they knock him out or something. But yeah, no one really dies in this seriously. Yeah, no one, not even the villain dies. All the people who die are just off screen or some random people, which makes it pretty PG, I think. Yeah, so the rating is pretty safely given. So Holga's the barbarian. Reggie John plays Senk, who I think is a paladin fighter. I think a multi-classing paladin fighter, really powerful, the most powerful character in the story. And obviously, he's the character who joins the party just for a small mission and then doesn't continue. And you always have this moment in D&D, which actually happens in real life, where you're like, "Hey, since you're so powerful, why don't you come and help us defeat the villain?" And he's like, "No, I actually have other things to do, and I gotta do it." And we're like, "But why not just come and help us for a while? It would really help us just end this story." And he's like, "No, I gotta do other things, guys. I can't." And that's literally the DM telling you like he can't give you more assistance than what's already given. And I mean, you don't have any fourth wall breaking moments that are so in your face, but you do have moments where it's nearing the fourth wall and you can tell that it's literally the DM like playing through the NPC telling you things, and these characters are just responding to what's happening. So there's one cool scene where they try to cross this bridge, and in Vega John's body, Zank's body, the DM is sort of like narrating, so you got to step through this bridge in a specific pattern. There's a bunch of tiles where you got to put your foot in the right positions, and if you step in the wrong place, the whole thing's going to collapse. And just as he's explaining that, Simon, who's the sorcerer, just going to steps on one of the tiles and the whole thing explodes. And he's just like, "Oops, I guess we got to find another way now." So yeah, it's so D&D. It's exactly what happens when you play with a bunch of friends, and it's really cool. I think that whole nearing the fourth wall thing is yeah, kind of amazing. The stupidest character in the story is Kira, who is a kid, and I think that makes totally sense because she's just a dumb kid. She's just doing her own thing. And I don't know, it's just the way Ford is able to brainwash her to sort of hate her dad completely. I think it's totally realistic and totally makes sense. And it gives more motivation to the rest of the team to want to help Edkin, who is the bard of the story, to just go after Kira. But I think the one who's really, I would say, in a very strange position is Chris Pine's Edgin. Edgin is a bard who's an excellent planner who tries to help the team, though there are moments in time where other people in the team actually come up with the solutions to the problem better than him. Like Doric has some pretty cool moments where she's like, "I can figure this out." In other means, even Holga is the one that suggests that they use the teleportation staff to try to sneak their way into the castle by putting the portal onto a picture and smuggling the picture into the vault. It was genius. The idea is genius. I'm sure someone has done this before, because I haven't been following all of Matt Mercer's D&D lore, but I'm sure someone would have thought about this and they just put it in the film or something. But Yeah, it is genius, but Holga, the barbarian with like six intelligence, is able to think of this, whereas no one else is able to. And Edgin is supposed to be their master planner. He's just there, like I make the plans. They're like, what do you do? I make the plans. But they could have at least shown Edgin using some of the bard's abilities, like actually playing music to boost the party's abilities, or using his lute to actually cast some spells and weapons. And I don't know. It's really strange that they underplayed the Bard, a cool character to cast as the main character, and they didn't really know how to use him. He also only plays like two or three songs, two songs I think, and it's so irrelevant to the film that yeah, it's just not very helpful. There's one he plays to distract some people, and one more I think he just plays somewhere in between along the way. They don't really help anyone. So yeah, the team doesn't really have a Bard per se. It's just some strange guy called Atkin who's following them, and he's just there making plans. So yeah, every other character I think had more abilities and more function than Edgin for sure, and he's just there to drive the plot in some way. That was the one thing that really killed the story for me, is the underplaying of the main character who's clearly focused on so much. He's given so much lore, so much backstory, so much motivation to save his daughter and whatever, but he doesn't do anything other than just talk. So it's like you max out your charisma, but you lose everything else. Kind of character, I would say. And that's it. The villain, Sofina, played by Daisy Head, is interesting as well. She's just straight up an evil villain. She's like a necromancer's servant or something who wants to turn this entire city into zombies. And I think the idea is pretty straightforward. The motivation is pretty straightforward. She's pretty cool. She does a lot of cool things. She has fantastic abilities. And the final battle between all of them was pretty amazing. I think the CGI really was focused towards the final battle because there are moments in the other parts where the CGI is sort of subpar. I also like the natural sort of cosplaying effects and outfits and costumes used to dress up all the other characters in the film, all the other NPCs and whatever who are non-humans. I think it's really cool the idea to use sort of costumes instead of CGIing everyone. I think is really really nice to see on screen because it's very practical effects and things that encourage other people to sort of cosplay as them. So it's really very much helping the fan base in some ways to create this preset lore for people to be able to follow behind and people to be able to enjoy and like and realize that it's not too far-fetched, it's not so heavy CGI. It's actually pretty basic and pretty simple and very down to earth kind of effects, which is something that I always appreciated from filmmaking. I like all these movies that take that extra step to know that hey, we don't have enough CGI to do this, but we can achieve it using natural effects. And this is the best way to do it if we use this effect, and let's just do it. So I really like that kind of thought process put behind it. Overall, for me, as this is an average film, I'm going to rate this a 5 out of 10. But I personally really enjoyed this movie, and I definitely recommend it if you guys have not watched it. And I'm really looking forward to more iterations of Dungeons and Dragons. And I think it's been a fantastic job done by the team who is behind the production. And they really knew what they were doing. It's really by fans, for fans. And even if you're not a fan, you can enjoy this movie. I went with my wife, who barely knows about Dungeons and Dragons, who's played with me like once or twice, and that too is like probably half campaigns. But she really enjoyed the story and the quips and the lore and the backstory and the way the villains and the way the characters are introduced. You have the quips which you would naturally make while you're in the party, but you also have every member role playing as themselves, respectively, trying to achieve what they're supposed to. So I like that. I like all the sarcasm or the jokes, the ideas. One or two very genius moments, the asking the question to the corpse 3 times, or sorry, 5 times or something like that before it goes back to sleep. You can see that in the trailer. So it was kind of unfortunate that we already saw that in the trailer, which made me enjoy it less in the cinema. I would have liked to see it first time in the cinema. That would have been really funny. But yeah, the biggest genius moment I think is putting the portal on the photo and then transporting the photo into the wall so that they can come out of the portal from the photo. The plan didn't really succeed, but as you play a campaign, you realize that not everything is going to work as planned because some of the things are not what the DM wants you to do. Like the DM knows that this is going to break his entire campaign, so he makes it difficult for you to just all come out of the photo. Instead, he drops the photo on the floor so that it's difficult to come out. So that actually happens in the story. And you don't hear anything about the dungeon master. You don't hear anything about a game master or what's controlling things. There's none of that. It's just naturally flowing in the story, and I really like that. So, yep, that's it about Dungeons and Dragons from me. I definitely recommend this film to you guys if you haven't watched it. I really want to see more, and hopefully in the next one I want to see a proper bard who's able to use their bard abilities, and I would definitely like to see other kind of characters also brought to the light, such as a proper ranger, maybe a monk, and maybe even an artificer because that's a really cool thought. I also wouldn't mind seeing some steampunk type of Dungeons and Dragons, more into the future than the purely medieval kind. Though I've really enjoyed this medieval versions because we haven't really had a very cool medieval looking story. I think the last one was The Witcher, which really drove things a little bit. Before that was probably all the Hobbit stories, but it was really cool seeing all these amazing, beautiful scenes in the dungeon and the enemies and all these dragons and the villains that are showing up. It's really cool. Even the dragon in this story is kind of cute and it's underwhelming for sure. It's not a really terrifying dragon. The first time we saw it coming out of the cave, we thought like, oh, it's gonna be an insanely scary dragon. Turned out to be just this pudgy, fat dragon, which is super cute and cool, and it does this rolling attack. Oh, it's just so well done. It's so enjoyable. But it is what it is. I can't rate this anymore as is because I've told you that it's a very average, very safe film. It doesn't really push the boundaries of what Dungeons and Dragons could have been, and but it really opens up the door to more, which is not a reason I can give ratings for. So that's about it from me for this one. I'll see you guys in the next. Take care.